What I said to, I don't remember which family it was. If we offer a young man a scholarship, he's a 5-star to us. And it doesn't matter what the ratings say. And we offer guys scholarships in order to get them to come to school here. Some people take a wider swath, right? And they're going to offer a huge number of guys. And we haven't taken that approach as much, right? We do have some kind of formula that if we're going to sign X number at a position, we probably have to have X number of scholarships out in order to do that. But by and large, if we offer you a scholarship, it's to get you to come to school here. So, so we think these guys are all different. We got guys from a bunch of different states, right? So that's pretty neat, right? Arizona, California, Oklahoma, Kansas, Florida. So, Georgia, in Texas, right? So we were covering a lot of states here.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello, and welcome to a special signing day edition of the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here, as always, with Ryan Wallace from GoPowerCat.com and 24/7 Sports, and we are talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. I said this was a special edition, and on this show, we'll be breaking down the football recruiting class signed today by Kansas. We'll have separate episodes on the classes at Kansas State and at Missouri, to head to those respective KCSN channels if you want to see more on the players signed by those schools. Later on in this show, we'll talk to Kansas General Manager Rob Ianello to get his thoughts on the Jayhawks class. So stay tuned for that. As always, if you like what you're hearing, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. All of those things help us to grow the show and get us in front of more people like you. Ryan, it's here. All the months of talking to prospects and recruits, watching tape, going to camps and games, the lion's share of the 2025 class will sign their names today, effectively shutting down their recruitments and making their college choices official.
It feels good to finally get here, man. And I'm speaking from the K-State side, which, again, even the KU fans listening understand kind of what I'm getting at when I say that. It has taken a long time to get here, and it feels good that we're here, but yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of local kids to highlight for all three of these schools. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Well put. At the time we are shooting this, Kansas has signed 15 players with a class ranking of number 60 in the class, according to 24/7 Sports. Pretty uneventful signing day. Kansas came into the day with 15 commitments. They signed 15 guys. That's not including the 2 transfers the Jayhawks already have in the boat, which takes Kansas's overall class up to number 56. Kansas's high school / junior college class does include 1 4-star prospect, and it's the highest ranked player in the Jayhawks class. Surprise, surprise, Ryan. It's another defensive end. In this case, Adrian Hawley of Michigan City, Indiana.
Another defensive end from the Midwest as well, right? Because I'm thinking Austin Booker was from that area. If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but Holly kind of fits that mold, does he not?
He does.
If you're thinking ceiling, right? I don't want to put, Adrian in that type of category just yet, but in terms of projections, you would have to think that that's what Lance Leipold's staff is hoping Adrian Hawley can become.
Yeah, I joked around about him being another highly ranked defensive end. In last year's class, Kansas signed 2 4-star defensive ends in DJ Warner and Dak Brinkley.
Mm-hmm.
Transfers, Dylan Brooks and Bai Jobe are former 4-star players as well. It's a group that could be a major strength for Kansas moving forward as that talent kind of matures and grows. And Hawley's ceiling, Ryan, it's as high as any of those guys. You're talking about a guy who's a legit 6'4" with a better than 6'10" wingspan. He's a really impressive athlete, and as a junior, the tape was really raw. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the reasons, and you'll hear Rob Ianello talk about it in our segment later, as a senior, he put it all together with a huge year, and I think that was a big part of the reason that 24/7 wound up bumping that ranking up and making him the highest ranked player in Kansas's class.
That's kind of what I was going to say is like, because you mentioned about, Warner and all the other guys from last year, and, to a fan that isn't following closely, they might go, well, why is KU going after more top ranked guys at the same position? When they started after Holly, he wasn't the top ranked guy. I think this is a testament to Adrian Holly and his development over the course of the last year and a half that, obviously Kansas saw something in him, and then he became the 4-star guy. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching tape of him earlier on in the fall when we were, talking and highlighting KU's class early on. And his first, I think, highlight from his junior tape was a block punt, right? Or something of that nature. And it was
from like 5 feet away.
It was still a really freaking impressive block where you were going, man, there's something here. So if the other interesting thing to finish up on Holly, Kevin, is that all the guys you mentioned, it's not a situation of like, well, they're all kind of fit in the same box, so only one or two of them are going to play. They all are a little bit different. And I think you could see the KU staff really start to rotate those guys in, and each of them kind of carry their own roles as they continue to develop in Lawrence.
All right. So I want each of us, there's 15 players in this class, to pick a player in the class that we each like. And then together we'll talk about a sleeper to watch. So Ryan, who's a guy that stands out to you in this class that you like, maybe even more than what the recruiting ranking is?
I thought for a little bit on this, and I thought about talking about Justin Thurman, because that was a guy that I really liked out of high school, even, before he committed to Notre Dame. And so for him to end up at KU, I was like, this is, the timing feels right with Devin Neal moving on. But obviously I also am aware that KU's doing some transfer portal stuff at that position. And maybe that puts a pause on Thurman immediate impact, right? So I'm going to go back to when we originally talked about Kansas's class months ago, right? And a guy that I went back and revisited the senior tape, and Jackson Cook continues to pop for me. He's the second lowest rated guy, according to 24/7 in this class, at just an 85, out of Georgia, 6'1", 180. But man, there's something about this kid's tape that I just love. And at receiver, it's a position that they need a little bit of, something extra here coming up, knowing the guys that are leaving. But you see plays like that over and over again from Jackson Cook, the effort plays, keeping his balance. But then you got plays like this, these effortless tracking the ball. And it looks like he's running 70%, Kevin, and everybody else is hauling at like 110. And he's separating by 10, 15, 20 yards each time. I don't really grasp what maybe some of the national scouts didn't see that KU staff did. I think this is a really good get. And honestly, if you're one of those people that judges, how good a kid is by their offers, I know he didn't have huge offers, but you look at some of the offer list there and, you see Tulane there and you're like, well, Tulane can evaluate some skill guys. Memphis can evaluate some skill guys. Indiana, I think the season that we've seen from Indiana, they can evaluate some skill guys. So it might not be the most illustrious offer list, but I think some of those programs in there, we talk about it all the time, Kevin, when you see some of those programs go after certain positions, forget the rating, because there's something there. And I really like what KU got in Jackson Cook.
Yeah, to your point, Kansas is losing all three wide receiver starters, additionally losing Trevor Wilson and kind of do-it-all threat Torrey Laughlin, who spent this year as a wide receiver as well. So there are some holes in that room. They're probably going to fill most of those with transfers. Doug Emilion's probably going to get a spot in there as well. But there's room for a high school guy in that rotation. And so if Cook is able to come in and work, opportunity, it's there. I'll go ahead and pick a Kansan and not surprise you at all in this one. And Brandon Schmelsley, who recently got a rankings bump from 24/7 Sports now, where he's one of the top 10 players in the state of Kansas. To me, Schmelsley was always a fascinating eval because he's an 8-man player. He put up absolute video game numbers as an 8-man wide receiver, then as a quarterback, then as a defensive back. And so you watch him, and he's got just great athleticism. And you have some concern with an 8-man guy, right? About how is this going to play out when it's 11-man, when the competition level rises. But then you have Schmelzley's track numbers that indicate he's a pretty high-level athlete. You're in a 10.9 100-meter dash as a sophomore. As a junior, he long jumped almost 23 feet. I always tell people 22 feet is kind of the milestone where I'll circle it and say, okay, if a guy jumps 22 feet, he's pretty athletic. So to hit almost 23 is pretty darn good. And so the ball skills there are there. The skill level is there. The athletic indicators are there. And I think there's a lot to like about Schmelzley's potential moving forward. Kansas is going to start him off at safety, but he's an athlete that can play a lot of different spots and probably do them well.
Well, and he's a proven winner, right? I mean, Axel has won 4 straight, I think.
So I think they've won 5 straight technically. So he's won 4, I think. And the reason I say I think is he has on his Twitter profile 5-time state champion. So I don't know. Did he play high school as an 8th grader to where he might have also had another state title in there? I don't know. I do know every year he was in high school, they ended the season hoisting that trophy. He played different positions. I think, was it last year that he had, like 1 interception that he threw all year as a quarterback with just a ton of touchdowns, ton of rushing yards, picked off like 10 passes. I mean, was basically all over the place.
Well, and I think that goes back to something that you and I have always talked about when it comes to kind of those smaller class guys is, look, there's nothing wrong with a KU or K-State or Missouri or whoever taking a small class guy. But the thing is to me, if you're going to take a small class guy, they better be absolutely elite in a couple different areas. And I mean, not elite like, 5-star elite. I mean, obviously that would jump off the page, but I mean, like, you better stand out when we put the tape on, and Schmelzley stands out. Like, I mean, his athleticism is definitely a cut above, to the point where when you do watch him, you go, I don't know if it would matter what level he would play on. I think he could make a difference and make you notice him no matter where he's playing. It just happens to be at Axtell.
There are some pretty solid sleepers in this class, and one of my favorites is Tulsa Union defensive lineman Josiah Cheese Hammond, who will play defensive tackle in Lawrence. By the way, tired Cheese Hammond, wired Hammond Cheese. In all seriousness, Ryan, this is one of those guys that just feels like a great scheme and system fit. From a body standpoint, he reminds me so much of DJ Withers, another guy that played defensive end in high school and then came into Kansas, added a bunch of weight to play defensive tackle at Kansas, and he's done it pretty well at Kansas. Hammond has really good quickness. He gets off the ball with suddenness. And I think as he works with Matt Gildersleeve in the weight room, with Katie O'Connor on his nutrition, and with Jim Panagos on the nuances of playing defensive tackle, I think he has a lot of potential to be a major contributor.
The quickness here on these clips and the length too. I mean, you see the reach that he has. Yeah, I mean, when you start to get him in a strength and conditioning program, I mean, it's going to be a scary sight. And I mean, like you said, KU has proven now to have a track record of developing those guys on the interior of the defensive line. And he looks, like you said, Kevin, that he'll fit kind of that mold. And again, kind of getting back to what I was talking about with Jackson Cook, there are those offers, right, that kind of go like, yeah, this kid's probably got something here. The fact that he goes on an official visit to Iowa State, that I think kind of knows what they're looking for when it comes to those interior defensive linemen, and Utah. When Utah offers anybody on defense, I'm perked. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going, okay, like, let's throw that tape on. So that, again, another good sign to me, if I'm a KU fan, of you win over somebody that Utah really wanted to host on an official visit. And hey, Tulsa Union's had a history of developing defensive linemen. So all should bode well for Hammond and KU. A pretty good match there.
We'll have our interview with Kansas General Manager Rob Ianello here in a bit, but first, we wanted to tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. If you're headed to Allen Fieldhouse this winter, you know how hot it can get in that building. And Home Field has you covered with some of the coolest t-shirt designs you'll find, along with sweatshirts, jackets, and outerwear to throw on over the said t-shirt when you're headed outside after the game's over. Kansas has more than 50 items to choose from, so head over to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code linked below in the description. You can get 15% off your first order. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. It's National Signing Day and the early signing period, and we're joined by Kansas General Manager Rob Ianello. Rob, thanks for stopping by the show.
Oh, Kevin, Ryan, thanks for having us on here. Appreciate it very much.
Everyone loves the quarterback, so let's start there. We had David McComb on the show, really impressive young man, committed really early on in the process. What did you guys like about David McComb, and what made him sort of the choice at that quarterback position?
You know, the neat thing about David was he was the first guy to commit in this class, and he kind of started this whole thing about, a year ago. I mean, and so kind of jumped out in a leadership role right from the beginning, and Kim has been down here multiple times, has been around kids that are committed to us, or that came in and we were recruiting and he wanted to jump in. Who can I talk to? Who do you need me to see? And so he's really a neat kid, and really, the leadership that you want a quarterback to have, he demonstrated that from the beginning when he joined our class, and that was pretty neat. He's a real good, besides being a very good, obviously thrower and really good feet and a good runner, he's a heck of a competitor, right? And so I think in the quarterback position, you want to make sure you got a guy back there that's really going to be a competitor. And his team really turned around, right? A year ago, they weren't as good a program. This year, they went to the state semifinal. So he's really transformed that team also, and it's been fun to watch.
Is there a recruit in this class that you're more familiar with? I mean, with how often he came back with, he came in and worked out at camp even after he was committed, and he was around a lot. I know Coach Leipold said today that when he came in for visits, he would do chalk talks with Coach Zabrowski and stuff. It feels like he's a guy that you guys had a great feel for and really got to know through the.
We did, and because he committed so early, the conversations turned when he came to visit us from what you do to recruit a kid, right? You're always trying to recruit to those kind of coaching sessions, right, where he would have questions for Jim, and Jim would be able to talk with him, and it became more of a growth opportunity for David and an opportunity for us to get to know him really well and his football IQ. Then it was your normal kind of, hey, he's down here. What do we got to show? What do we got to talk about to try to get him to come here, right? And I'd say when you look at our group, Malachi Kirby's been on our campus many times, right? He came to our a year ago, right? Summer before before he committed to us, he was coming to our camp, and they had a car issue, but he still ended up coming to see us anyway that day, and he came back to the next camp, right? So he's been on our campus many times, right? So it's great familiarity with him as we go, and obviously Anderson Kopp is a legacy.
Yep.
Kind of get to know him when he was leaving a little younger, right? Come back to our camp, come back to campus, come back to games, and then got to see him kind of grow and develop and become the guy he is today. Tate Nagy's been here, several times. Brandy Svelzy's been here a number of times, right? So we got several guys here, and then Bryson Hayes has been here since he was a sophomore and on our campus. So we got a chance to have a lot of these guys on campus, a bunch during their time. And then we had most of all these guys were back when we played Colorado. And there's a neat picture somewhere on social media of all of them together on the sideline. I think there was 13 of our 15 signees were back. We're here for that game. So we have a really good familiarity with this group, and they have a good familiarity with each other, and it kind of gelled, and that's been neat.
Justin Thurman too, right? Was a guy that didn't he come to camp as like an 8th grader or right on Henry?
He's been around the bigger camp as a freshman, and we offered him the scholarship as a freshman. And then he, they're from local area folks originally, and Then he came back again a year ago, right? A year ago before he then transitioned to, maybe another place. And then it kind of came full circle that he came back to us. But really happy to have him. He's a really good player and a really great family. They're great fits for us. Great high school program. Coach Thompson there's, won a playoff game or more every year. He's been the head coach at Jesuit. It's just a terrific program, great place.
Kevin, you kind of stole my thunder there with Justin Thurman. I wanted to go there with you, Coach, and maybe even throw in Bryson Hayes too, because I wanted to get a coach's perspective on, with both of those guys having been committed elsewhere. Was that a situation where the KU staff was, continuing to just kind of keep in touch, or did they reach back out to you? And how has that changed over time? It seems like in modern day recruiting, just because you might not get a kid the first time, you never want to kind of go ice cold on a kid because things change really quick, don't they?
Yeah, I think with Justin, right, when Jonathan Wallace had developed a great relationship with him, and when he had told us he was going to go in another direction, Jonathan just would do kind of periodic check-ins with the family and with him just to see how things were going. And then when it became apparent that he wasn't going to change his mind, then I think we became a real strong option for him right away because Jonathan had kind of kept in touch with him on a periodic basis. With Bryson, he was kind of the one we felt got away, right? He was the young man that was committed to another school, but we always felt like this was the place for him and that he always wanted to come here. For some reason, it didn't connect right away. So we pursued him at a pretty good speed, from August on, and we're able to, sensing that maybe he was open to that. And then eventually it turned around. And pretty neat this morning, right, I think he's got some pictures out there of how his house was set up with a table of Kansas, and he had his bunch of folks in his house, and it was pretty neat to see everybody being pretty excited about him coming to Kansas, a Kansas kid.
Friend of the show, Michael Swain, pointed out that this is the most Kansans KU signed to a scholarship spot, I think, in the last 8 classes. And we've talked on this show about how when we talk to 2026 kids as well, there seems to be an increased excitement level about KU in that class with local kids. You guys added Leon Douglas, who we've had on the show, who helps in Casey Moe as well. So I guess that's a really long way to set up the question. How have you seen things change for you guys locally over the last few?
Well, we have made a
reception locally.
We've made a big effort to start close, work further away. That's been an interest. So the state of Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, and then broaden out from Missouri and parts out. So that's been a huge emphasis for us. And when we came in here in 21, the 21, that class was gone, right? Those kids that were going to be seniors in the fall of 21 had already pretty much decided. So we tried to jump on the next class as quick as we could, but we didn't know them as well as, and have relationships even developed with them as well as some other folks had at that time. And we just tried to chip away here, and there were some other schools in our conference, maybe, recruiting the state at a bit higher level, right? And we're getting kids to go to their schools. And so we just had to dig in and do that. And, and if people look at the history of Kansas football before we got here, I mean, it probably sometimes wasn't a place that, hey, if you grew up in the state of Kansas, somebody else you kind of saw as having a dominant football program, right? And you didn't see the University of Kansas that way. And I think a lot of that changed when game day was on this hill, right? So in the 22 season, what Kansas football could be. And now with the commitment that the university has made to Kansas football, to our players and to our staff, I think that's resonating in big ways, right? And so I think it's noticeable in this class, and hopefully it's going to be noticeable in classes down the way that, that the University of Kansas, there's no reason it can't be a top-level football program in this country, a top-level football program in the Big 12, and we want all the best players in the state of Kansas to play at the University of Kansas.
Coach, I'm looking at, this commitment list, and it's one that Kevin and I have been covering on this show since the summer, but talking about well before that. And I look at guys that, and Kevin and I have been in the recruiting industry, and even we will admit that the science of ratings is highly imperfect. But I'm looking at Garrett Martin, a guy that I think is underrated as an 87 on 24/7 Sports. I look at Jackson Cook as a guy that I really like as an 85. Is there anybody in the staff meetings that you guys are just kind of like, man, they don't know what we have in this kid?
Yeah, I think what I said to, I don't remember which family it was. If we offer a young man a scholarship, he's a 5-star to us. And it doesn't matter what the ratings say. And we offer guys scholarships in order to get them to come to school here. Some people take a wider swath, right? And they're going to offer a huge number of guys. And we haven't taken that approach as much, right? We do have some kind of formula that if we're going to sign X number at a position, we probably have to have X number of scholarships out in order to do that. But by and large, if we offer you a scholarship, it's to get you to come to school here. So, so we think these guys are all different. We got guys from a bunch of different states, right? So that's pretty neat, right? Arizona, California, Oklahoma, Kansas, Florida. So, Georgia, in Texas, right? So we were covering a lot of states here. And we're covering a lot of different positions here in this group. So, we got some guys here that going to come at mid-semester, so they'll get a jump on some things, and that'll be great for them and great for us. And in today's world, more kids are doing that than they used to years ago. And but it should be a fun class, and it's really neat how they've connected with each other. And they're really going to come in here with a great relationship with each other and a great bond, and that's going to be fun.
One of the guys that you guys were way out ahead of the recruiting industry on, it was a guy that Coach Leipold really talked up today as a person, and that's Adrian Hawley, a guy that, maybe didn't have as much recruiting attention. Now, all of a sudden, 24/7 ranked him as a 4-star guy the other day. But what did you guys see so early on with Adrian where you said, hey, this kid's a Jayhawk, like this is the guy that we want here?
When Jim Panagos first made the contact there with Adrian, his high school, went in there. You talk about how his work ethic, right, his attitude, come early, stay late. His coaches really, so high on him. He's got him and his mom and his young sister, but then you watch the tape, and he really plays hard. Right, he plays really hard. He's got a great motor, and then he's got the vitals that you're looking for. Right, we feel like we got to get a little bit longer in some positions, right, and add length to our team. And he's certainly one of those guys at defensive end that will be able to do that for us. So you put all those intangibles with the tape, and then the character of the young man. We kind of put that all together, and that was, that's what really kind of stood out to us a lot to him and attracted us to him.
Let's go one spot down from Holly, Coach, to Jaden Nickens. You got to be a pretty rarefied air type of athlete to have the interest of both a Power 4 football program and a Power 4 basketball program. How did those conversations come about with the basketball staff? Like, you guys going to them like, can we make this work? Walk us through maybe how the Jaden Nickens thing kind of came to be.
Well, I think it was a little bit of a combination because, we obviously knew about Jaden when he was in Oklahoma, right? And we had shown interest in him, and we had called up on him, but then he made an early commitment to somebody else, right? And then he went on this basketball circuit, and his AAU coach, you coach Townsend very well in men's basketball, right? So when he moved out to California, then in Sierra Canyon was playing, I think the AAU basketball coach in a conversation with Chris, hey, this kid's open. This kid is open, interested in Kansas, and you football folks should take a look at him. So we did. And then the conversations were about trying to do both. And basketball programs, feels like they can get a guy for free a little bit, I guess, to join them. And we feel like we can get a guy that can really help us. And, Jaden's going to he's a football player first. He understands that. And as we've told him on his trip, we're hoping you're not joining the basketball program until way late sometime in January. Okay. We don't expect you to be joining the basketball program around Christmas. Around Christmas or after, not Thanksgiving. Right.
So I was kind of killing myself for not asking Coach Leipold about this guy, but somebody I'm a big fan of in this class is Josiah Hammond. I think not only is he a really good player, but you talk about scheme and system fit. He's a lot like defensive tackles that you guys have found a lot of success with in terms of the body type and everything else. And I know this year, talking to any of the players, they raved about Katie O'Connor and the job that she did with nutrition and getting them there. I guess what stood out about Josiah and do you see him as, hey, this is a guy the type of which we've found a lot of success with here?
Probably would remind you a little bit right now, his body and stuff, of DJ Withers when he first showed up here in summer 21. I think that's how I would, the bucket I would put kind of Josiah in. And, he came here last spring with his high school coach and some other teammates and really made a good impression on us. Got around our coaches, got around our, some of our players, and was here for like a full day. And, one of the things that we did without giving away the Cook's secrets is we kind of got away from those springtime big junior days and more let a kid kind of pick their day to come here, and then, made those days, kind of more individual and more meaningful, we felt like, for a young man when he came to visit us, right? So we've kind of gotten away from, hey, Saturday we're going to have 30 kids come to practice. Yeah, we've stopped doing that. And so he was one of those guys that came during the week and got a chance to kind of see more, and then also as a coach staff got a chance to be around them more. And he made a good impression from that time on. And Oklahoma, over the years, particularly when Coach Mangino was here, has been very, very good to Kansas, right? There's a lot of really good players on the Orange Bowl team from Oklahoma. So when we looked at that and we studied that, that was something that was important for us to try to go back and make some more headway in the state of Oklahoma. They have really good football there. They have spring practice. I mean, the best players in the state of Oklahoma are equal to the best players in the state of Texas. And so it's closer for us. And so we really wanted to do a good job there. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction. Coach, kind of able to desire, both being from Oklahoma.
Getting away, maybe taking a more broad look at things and away from just the individuals themselves. I get the vibe that you guys are really pleased and very excited with this class, as you should be. But how much more pleased and proud are you guys as a staff to put together this group, knowing the hurdle that you had to go through of not having those true game day visits with the stadium construction and all those things? That had to be a major challenge.
Yeah, it even goes back further than just a game day, right? So last December, when we went to our bowl game, we moved out of our facility, right? And so when we got kids, any kid that came here in December, that was the last time that they would have been able to, see our facility, these things as they're going to be until now, right? So we went through anytime these guys came in spring practice or anything like that, our facility was under construction and the indoor facility was where everything was, right? We had our meetings in there. We were lifting in there. We had the training room in there. There was a point in time we were eating in there. It was super Walmart, right? I mean, so, and so they didn't get a chance to really see everything we had. Then when we had kids for official visits in the summer, Turner Construction was gracious enough to give us a couple of slots on a Friday afternoon where, we were in hard hats and goggles and protective gear, and they gave us a tour of the construction zone of the facility, right? So, and then we fast forward to after Colorado, when a lot of these guys were here, they came down here on Sunday, and a lot of them the first time they've ever seen this building or walked through it, and some didn't know what to compare it to either. Some that had been here before knew what to compare it to and knew the difference in our facility right now. But so we recruited an entire class without a facility, without a stadium, without a home game. And so I give our recruiting staff, big props for that, because that's not easy to do.
Absolutely.
They did a great job with it and thought of creative ways and different ways to do things. And it worked out.
What was it like also putting together this class against the wider view of, hey, we're losing 30 seniors. There's going to have to be a pretty significant effort in the portal as well. And then trying to figure out that balance between here's what we want to get from the high school ranks and here's what we're going to need to replace the experience through the transfer portal.
Yeah. So we really set out and looked at our team and 15 was a number we set out. Okay, if we identified some positions, okay, where are we older, where are we younger, where do we really want to take high school, okay, and then where do we know we're going to have to go portal, and then we were transparent. We would take, for example, the receiver position, right? We were transparent. There's 4 guys here, but we are going to go and take some young men out of the portal. We're losing 5 seniors, and so we also were transparent with them. At linebacker, we're losing Malachi. We're going to take some older guys in this group, right? And so I think guys saw opportunity at those positions, but also we were transparent with them about how we're going to do this. And I think in today's world of college football, you have to look at your big picture of your roster and have a plan from the beginning. Okay, how many high school young men? Because high school recruiting is always going to be the lifeblood of what you're doing. You have to do a good job in that area. You have to get them. We're a developmental program. You got to have guys that are younger that you can take and develop, right? So we have to look at that and then from a big picture view. How many guys in high school, and then where would we go in the portal? Now we're probably going to, maybe take more young men in the portal in this period of time than we did last year. We'll maybe move forward, right? But that's just kind of nature of how the numbers fall right now.
Coach, one more from me that I'm curious about, and it might require you to pull back the curtain a little bit, or as much as you're willing to. Is there any one particular recruitment in this class that you and the staff are just really there's some sentimental value to it for you guys, or maybe one that you guys are just especially proud that you got done?
Well, I don't necessarily think about that. I mean, I just think as you look to touch on what you guys talked about, right? I mean, we got Bryson from the state of Kansas, Tate, okay, from Kansas. I mean, those are Brandon from Kansas, right? I mean, it's a big deal, right? I mean, so I think that's important for us. And then for somebody like Justin, who had known us, but they came back to us, right? I think that speaks volume for, when a young man goes someplace else, we're not blowing up their phone and we be professional people, and we wish the guy the best of luck. And here's who we are. Here's what we represent. And it can't be one thing when you recruit and one thing when they don't come to your school. Right? You are who you are all the time. And so I think that you ever have a couple guys that decided to go someplace else and then came back to you, shows that they, the type of program we have, top to bottom, for the long haul. And I think that's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Rob, thanks again for joining us. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you like what you've seen or heard, leave us a like, subscribe, or hit us with a 5-star rating. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.